Hello everybody, and here to do the GT4 overlay for the ESR community here, overview I should say. We're going to talk about the cars in the GT4 class, what's good, what's bad about them, and what really becomes a good beginner car, good starting point car. The car we're focusing on right now is the Ginetta. This one is being driven by me in this particular replay. What to say about this car? I really like this car. It handles really nicely. It's really fun to drive, challenging without being too stable. It does have three things I would say that make it a problematic car, though. Number one is its right-hand side drive, which, if that's a problem for you, that's a problem for you. That's something that kind of differs from person to person. It does have pretty poor visibility inside the cockpit. There are some support structures that just really get in the way with the roll cage and everything. So it's one of the worst visibility cars in the GT4 class. And finally, it kind of lacks that top-end power that you want on certain tracks. In fact, a lot of tracks, if we're being honest. As a result, I have to kind of give it a tier 3 thing because it's kind of niche. And GT4, while being very, very different with cars, I think actually has a lot more parity on a pace level than GT3 does. As a result, I cannot recommend this as a car to go with for beginners, people looking to build up their experience, their knowledge of cars. The Ginetta would be something to stay away from, but it is a really, really fun car, and if you want to give it a shot, that's not necessarily a big problem. Next up is the Mercedes Amg Gt4 car. This car feels a lot like the little brother of the GT3 car existing, and of course I rated the GT3 car quite highly. I had it as one of the easier cars to drive, and also one of the absolute tier 1s, and again, Mercedes is in that top tier. It's a front-end car. There's not really anything terribly tricky about it. The visibility is good. I think it's strong at more or less any track you go to. I think in general this is a very solid car, and I would recommend it. Not as my number one pick for a new driver, but it is very, very high on the list, and is one that I think anybody should be able to master relatively quickly. Our third car is the one everyone was excited about. The Chevrolet Camaro. I was hyped for this car to be in the game. I'm putting it at tier 2. It's not difficult to drive, but it does have a bit of a slide to it that I think does mean that compared to the other front-engine cars, it's a little bit more difficult. It's not where I would start, but it is super fun. It's not necessarily as fast as I was thinking, because in the tracks I did testing on, there wasn't one where it did super great. So I think there's also that kind of working against it, that it's a car that has a certain level of, like the Ginetta, not necessarily top-end performance, and then you add in the slide factor and you end up with a tier 2 car. But I think it's still very manageable. If you're looking for American muscle, it's finally in the game. It's ready to do that. And I do expect to see a lot of these when we do a GT4 series. Next up, we got the Audi. I'm more of a fan of the GT3 Audi than I am the GT4 Audi, but at the same time, the GT4 Audi is probably easier to drive. Very, very stable. Probably the easiest to drive non-front engine car in the group. It's not terribly fast anywhere. In my testing anyways, I found that it really, maybe it's a car that requires a lot more focus to really get the maximum out of it, and as a result I can't put it in tier 1, but I'll put it in tier 2. It's still a good car to pick up. It's if you like the Audi R8 at GT3, kind of ironically, this is not that similar to it. I find that they, unlike the Mercedes to Mercedes comparison, this feels a fair bit different. That being said, it's still a solid car option. It's still something to look at. Moving down the field here, we got the KTM. The KTM is the oddest car of the group, and It makes sense that it is, because the KTM is a GT4 car that in real life goes through a number of BOP adjustments and changes that lead it to being a very, very weird car. I find it very mercurial. It's either at the top of the time charts or near the bottom of the time charts, depending on what track I went to. As a result, I obviously can't recommend it. It's weird. It bounces. It's a bit bizarre even to be inside the cockpit of. I got it tier 3 because, honestly, tier 4 is a one-car show. We'll get to it. But, I don't know. This is a stay away from. Like, it's in the same tier as the Ginetta on my ratings here, but it doesn't even feel like it really should be in the same tier as the Ginetta. It almost feels like it should be tier 4 and there should be a 5th tier. But I couldn't really justify having 2 tiers with just one car in them. So, problematic would be the word I'd use for it. Avoid it. Definitely a challenge for more experienced drivers. Next up is the McLaren 570S. I do believe that is the correct combination of words anyways. I really like this car. It is tier 1 for sure. It's smooth. It's pretty fast everywhere. It's stable. It's got decent view range from inside the cockpit. It does feel a little bit claustrophobic, like any McLaren does, because it is a very squashed down car. So you know there is some things that trigger my own personal senses to not like it quite as much as I otherwise would. But it's definitely a car to look at. Like I said, it was fast everywhere. It was stable everywhere. I think it's a real winner. If you're looking for something that's not front-engined, the McLaren 570 is something that I think is definitely worth taking a look at in the GT category here. A solid addition to the GT4 category. My number 1 pick, though, for car to use is this one here. That is the Aston Martin Vantage GT4. This car, it has pretty much everything you would like about the GT3 Vantage, the GT3 Aston Martin. It's competitive everywhere. It's fast. It's stable. It's got good view range. It's got good vision. It's got an excellent sound to it. Yeah, I think this is my beginner recommendation car. I mean, if you really don't want to go front engine, you can go the McLaren, but the Aston Martin is, I think, the option here. Although the Mercedes is also is worth a mention here. Very, very solid. I like it. That's really all I can say. I recommend it highly. I mean, basically, I'm looking at the stability, the speed, and the cockpit view. Effectively, how good are those 3 things? And if those things are all good, the car gets high ranks. The Bmw M4. Personally, I don't really like the car. Maybe it's because I've been racing it in race room so much when we do these GT4 things. But I don't have really a ton of negatives to say about it. I did struggle to get it up to pace on some tracks, but it is reasonably solid. It is good visibility. It is fairly stable. It is relatively easy to learn. It is front engine. You know I always recommend the front engine for newcomers. I suppose I have to put it in tier 1 because I can't think of a specific falling for it. But it almost feels like it falls into tier 2. Still, it's not a car to avoid. I personally just don't particularly love it. Next on the list is the Alpine. This is a tier 3 car. I mean, for one hand, it's a little bit trickier, it's a little bit twitchier, it's a little bit more responsive, which isn't necessarily a good thing for newer drivers. It does also have a very weird camera view. I can get inside the cockpit here. Completely blank dashboard. I know some people don't care about that, and you obviously have the overlay that can help you out with that and so on. But for me, I find it quite disorienting. The vision isn't terribly great. It's got no rear view mirror. So like, there's a lot of problems with it that go just with the cockpit view. So I would avoid it personally. But it's an interesting challenge. If you're a upper end driver and you're looking for a challenge, I think the Alpine is a good place to look at. It's a pretty solid thing in that regard. There's only one car that I actually recommend that no one drive. We'll get to that. Next up, we have the Porsche. I really like this livery, for the record, the Allied racing car. You're all going to expect me to say negative things about the Porsche, probably, because in GT3, I'm very negative on the Porsche. I think that the GT3 Porsche is the worst car to learn on. It has very little in the way of transference to other cars. It's tricky. It's got a very high skill basement to make the car work. That is not the case for the GT4 Cayman. This car is a joy to drive. It's very, very solid. It is competitive anywhere you go. It's pretty solid. It's pretty stable. I don't quite want to put it in Tier 1 because it does still have a little bit of a problem where it's kind of a little unique. It doesn't necessarily transfer over the other cars. But I'm going to put it at the top of Tier 2, basically. It's a really good car. If you're into the Porsche mystique, I don't believe that there's a skill threshold like there is at GT3 with this car. So, good news for those who like the Porsches. The worst car on the grid is the Maserati. I say this because it struggles on a performance level. No ABS is a huge problem. No traction control is a problem. And I mean, I don't think I have to go any further. It's a beast of a car, and it's a thrill to drive, but God, if you're looking for decent results, stay the hell away from this car. And if you're a newcomer, absolutely stay away from this car. There's nothing else really to say. I really am happy this car is in the game because it is very unique. It's tremendously interesting. But it just definitely gets my stay away from one. Have I got all the cars here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Or let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Aston Martin 7. BMW's 8. 9 with the Alpine. 10 with the Porsche. 11 with the Maserati. Yep, that's everybody. So those are the cars. So just a quick recap. The newbie-friendly / highly competitive ones at Tier 1 include the Aston Martin and the Mercedes if you're looking for front-engine drive. And we'll have to give it to the McLaren 570 if you don't want to go that route. Tier 2, BMW M4, Chevrolet Camaro, Audi R8, and also the Porsche. All fit pretty nicely in there. You can go with those and it's okay. After that, we get into Tier 3. This is the kind of stay away from area. The Ginetta, the Alpine, the KTM, and of course at Tier 4, the Maserati are the ones to avoid if you're new to just the game in general and need a little bit of help. And if you're worried about pace and so on, these are the cars to avoid. This is, of course, just my opinion. I did do a considerable amount of testing, so I feel quite confident that I am indeed correct. I'm just pulling up the standings from last year just to make sure I have not missed a car. I'm entirely certain everything is in there, but there may be a car I missed. Let's see here. I got the... Let's see here. I got the Aston Martin, I got the Audi, the Mercedes, the BMW, the Alpine, the McLaren, the Ginetta has been covered, the KTM has been covered, the Porsche has been covered, the Camaro has been covered, the Maserati. So yeah, that's everything. I hope you found this somewhat useful. I don't think this is going to be the most useful video. For one, I really sandbag getting it out here because we've been having all kinds of server problems with ACC, and it's been a bit of a nightmare, and that's not a poor is me or poor admin thing. Just saying, it is making it harder to get some side projects done as fast as I'd like. So check out our other videos here. We got the Super Saturday series coming up. We have action tomorrow coming at your way from Kalami in the GT series. And we're about ready to start the 3D Speed series. So if you want to get involved in any of that, check out the Discord and make your way to the appropriate administrator to answer any questions that you might have. Have a good day.